The first time James Whitmore realized time could make a sound. It was the night his father didn't come home. The clock in the kitchen ticked louder than it ever had before, each second snapping through the air like a crack in glass. James sat at the small round table, his feet not quite touching the floor, staring at the clock as if watching it hard enough might force it to move faster. Outside, blue and red lights spilled through the curtains, flashing against the walls like warnings that refused to fade. No one spoke. His mother stood by the sink, hands gripping the edge as though the room might tilt without her holding it steady. James didn't cry. He didn't move. He just listened to time passing, loud and heavy, and learned something he would never forget. Time does not care how badly you want it to stop. From that night on, James measured his life in waiting. Waiting for the front door to open, waiting for his mother to smile again, waiting for the silence to loosen its grip on the house. James was 11 years old, born in England but raised in America, in a town that looked permanent but felt temporary the moment you lived in it. Houses were neat, streets were wide. People waved, but never stayed long enough to matter. It was the kind of place where things disappeared quietly, just like his father. As the years passed, James learned how to shrink himself. He spoke less, he listened more. At school, teachers praised his behavior, but forgot his face. Other kids didn't bother teasing him. He wasn't interesting enough. Being invisible felt safer than being disappointed. Time kept moving. By 13, James could sit through an entire day without saying more than a few words. He watched life instead of stepping into it. He noticed how people rushed everywhere: hallways, parking lots, grocery stores. As if time were chasing them with a weapon drawn, James never ran. He walked home slowly, every day, counting cracks in the pavement, watching shadows stretch and collapse. The slower he moved, the quieter time sounded. That mattered to him, even if he didn't fully understand why. When he turned 14, his mother took a second job. The house grew emptier, quieter, colder. James didn't complain. He understood waiting better than most people his age. That summer, he started working at Miller's Auto Repair. Mr. Miller didn't ask questions. He handed James a broom and pointed to the floor. James swept carefully, methodically, as if the garage were something fragile. He liked machines. Machines broke for reasons. They didn't vanish without explanation. Every afternoon, on his break, James sat outside the shop and watched the road. That was when he noticed the old man. The man sat on the curb across the street every day, wearing a faded baseball cap and boots that had seen better years. He stared at the road like it might eventually answer him. James watched him for 3 days before crossing over. "Are you all right?" James asked. The man looked up and smiled slowly. "Depends how long you're willing to sit." James sat. The man's name was Henry. He had been many things in his life: mechanic, soldier, husband, but now he was mostly just someone with too much time and nowhere to spend it. They talked every afternoon, sometimes about engines, sometimes about nothing at all. Henry never rushed him. Silence didn't scare Henry. "People think time is money," Henry said once, tapping the cracked glass of his watch. "That's the biggest lie ever told." James frowned. "What is it then?" Henry smiled. "A choice." James didn't argue, but the words stayed with him. Time passed, slowly, then quickly. The night his mother collapsed in the kitchen, time broke apart completely. She fell without warning, her body hitting the floor with a sound James still heard in his dreams. He froze for half a second, just long enough to feel fear grab his chest, then moved. He called for help. He knelt beside her. He waited for sirens that seemed too far away. At the hospital, James sat alone under harsh white lights, staring at a clock mounted high on the wall. Each second felt sharp, painful. He wanted to scream at it to hurry. Then he remembered Henry's voice: "Time is a choice." James took a breath, then another. He stayed present. He didn't fight the waiting. He stood inside it. Hours later, a doctor told him she was stable. That was the night James stopped running. From time after that, he began to change. He spoke up when someone was struggling. He stayed longer when someone needed company. He learned that really listening was a way of giving someone part of your life. People noticed. Henry noticed too. "You're different, Henry," said one afternoon. James shrugged. "I think I'm just paying attention." Henry laughed. "That's all it ever takes." The town changed that year. Shops closed. New buildings rose. People moved faster than ever. And then, one day, Henry stopped coming. 3 days passed. Then 5. James felt the old waiting return, heavy and loud. On the 6th day, he found Henry in a hospital bed. Cancer, late stage, no time left to rush. Henry smiled when he saw him. "Looks like time finally caught up." James swallowed hard. "I don't want it to." Henry squeezed his hand. "That's why you're here." They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to. Henry died on a Tuesday morning. James walked until his legs ached, until the town gave way to the river. He watched the water move forward, endlessly, without fear. That was when he understood, you don't control how much time you're given. You control how fully you live inside it. Years passed. James grew older, stronger, braver. He went to college. He learned how to fix things, again machines, systems, problems that mattered. His mother laughed more now. The house felt warmer. James still walked slowly. He stood in a hospital hallway, fixing a machine that had failed at the worst possible moment. When it started again, relief filled the room. A nurse smiled at him. "You saved us hours." James shook his head. "I just gave them back." Later, sitting alone outside, he listened to the clock above the entrance. For the first time, time didn't sound like pain. It sounded like breathing. James stood up and moved forward, not rushing, not waiting, just living, and time followed.